Please join us in welcoming CEO and President of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, Steve Hill, and President of the Las Vegas Raiders, Sandra Douglas Morgan, in conversation with Skift Editor-in-Chief, Sarah Kopit.
All right, thank you everybody. This is going to be a fun one. We're going to get to talk about sports. So, sports has been an absolute economic juggernaut for the travel industry, and that's putting it mildly. It's set to grow at about 18%. It's supposed to hit $2 trillion, that's with a T, trillion, by 2030. So I'm curious, Steve, first to you, why do you think that this is going on right now, and what has it meant for your city of Las Vegas?
Well, it's meant a lot to Las Vegas. It has been the next step in the city's evolution. The commitment that Mark Davis and the Raiders made to partner with the community and build Allegiant Stadium, I compare to the Mirage being built in '89. Those are the two most transformative projects in the last number of decades.
Yeah.
And sports is just a great blend in Las Vegas. The excitement that the city brings to the sport, the excitement that sports brings to the city has helped drive that forward.
And Sandra, now that the Raiders are, firmly ensconced in Las Vegas, for all of you non-sports fans, they're relatively new to the city. What has the team's presence done to Las Vegas and both for tourism and just the broader economy in general?
It's exciting because the Raiders, we're entering into our 5th season in Las Vegas, and moved to Las Vegas with the first season being in 2020, so there were no fans. So we're really focused on obviously growing our local fan base and making sure people know it's the Las Vegas Raiders. But it's exciting to see that since 2021, over 60, if not like maybe 65% of people said they came to Las Vegas to go to an event or a concert or a Raider game at Allegiant Stadium. So clearly it's bringing in new visitors above and beyond the 40 million that Las Vegas hosts every single year. It also gives, there's camaraderie in sports. Obviously, we're at a time, as we all know, there's a lot of divisive kind of, rhetoric and other things going on. But when people walk into that stadium on a Sunday, they know they're there to root for their team and hopefully even high five someone even though they're on a different team. So it's bred, I think, a great sense of community. And we made it an intention when the Raiders moved to be woven into the fabric of the Las Vegas community. So community service and sustainability efforts are top of mind for everyone in our organization as well, and we're continuing to give back. And I think that's why the partnership, whether it be with the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority and a lot of our sponsors, has gone so well, because they know that we're in it for the right reasons.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Allegiant Stadium. For all of you non-sports fans in the room, that's where the Raiders play. And there has been some controversy about the public money used to build the stadium, $750 million. I was wondering if you could speak to some of the economics behind that and how, the community, Las Vegas, the city, the taxpayers are being paid back for their investment.
Sure. And Las Vegas is unlike a number of other communities. There are a couple of buckets, in my opinion, that you can justify building a stadium with public money. One is an economic development initiative, and that's really about bringing tourists to your city to attend events at that stadium. And that's certainly the premise that is the foundation for Allegiant Stadium. There's a community development aspect that matters to us, that we have bolted on to that economic development concept that helps and matters in Las Vegas, but is really the premise in a number of other cities. From our perspective, we have two threshold issues. One is we would not put public money into a competitive venue. We have arenas in Las Vegas. It would not be my recommendation that we put public money into an additional arena. But when we build a football stadium or a baseball stadium, there's not going to be a competitive venue in Las Vegas to those. The second is that there has to be a clear return on investment from a tax standpoint for the taxpayers on that investment. We are putting about $50 million a year to pay for the $750 million in bonds. We generate quite a bit more in the taxes because that event is in the stadium. And if you can't hit those two thresholds, then my recommendation would be that you do not put public money into stadiums.
Yeah.
And above and beyond that, there are 10 home Raider games, but we also have more than 10, if not 15, additional events at the stadium as well, whether it be the National Rugby League, concerts. We've had Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Morgan
Super
Wallen.
Bowls.
Super Bowls. I was going to end with that, but yeah, that was a huge one. And and much, much more to come, obviously, because of the work of the Convention and Visitors Authority, whether it be the NCAA Final Four tournament, WrestleMania is coming. And so these are additional events above and beyond the Raider games that we're happy to host and know that it's, again, bringing a different demographic to Las Vegas and obviously staying as well. And then you just add in as well the kind of bleisure component, which I was not good at doing when I came to New York. I wish I would have had more time to do that. But, people coming for business travel and being able to stay for a Raider game or for F1 or for one of the many events that we have.
I love that you called it bleisure because I hate bleisure. Like I don't like.
Too
Yeah,
many syllables.
I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm trying to change that. So you heard it here. Bleisure. We're renaming it right now. And we were talking in the green room about the community aspect, about how you opened some practices.
Yes, that is a definite huge component. So there was a community benefits plan that the Raiders agreed to when going through the legislative process for public funding. And when I joined, and it's my third season, I wanted to make sure that we're not only just meeting that, but exceeding that, even operationally. So we heavily focus on our women and diverse-owned businesses, whether they be in the stadium or different businesses that we contract with, not only at the stadium, but at headquarters as well, but also making sure that the community understands that the stadium, because it was built by them, is for them. And for the first time, we hosted 2 open training camp practices at the stadium. So had over 20,000 people in the middle of the week, honestly on a school night as well, coming to see the Raiders do a training camp. And based on the data that we received back, over 70% of those people at each of those practices, it was their first time that they were at the stadium. So giving people a chance to see, whether it be our club spaces or just the stadium in general, obviously making sure it's a fun experience with retail and DJs and things like that. But it was great. It was very well received, and it just happened this August. So we'll continue to do more open community events like that, so that everyone can be proud of the stadium.
Yeah, that's fantastic. For the audience, I just want to remind you to pull out your phones, and we have an app for you guys. If you want to ask a question of our panel, please send them in. When we get to the end, we'll pick a few. So get your questions out. But I want now to talk about the Super Bowl. So Las Vegas had a Super Bowl, and I must admit I'm not a huge American football fan, but I watched the Super Bowl last year in no small part because of a certain pop star that I may have possibly seen on the screen, but I digress. What does the Super Bowl, what did that Super Bowl mean to Las Vegas, and how do you carry on? Like, what do you do now? Like, how do you match that? How do you keep that momentum going year after year?
Yeah, that's a couple of good questions there. From a pure event standpoint, and when we measure economic impact, we measure incremental economic impact. It is the comparison between having a Super Bowl and what that weekend would have been like without the Super Bowl. And it was slightly over $1 billion of economic impact. It's the largest event itself that we have ever had. The event was fantastic. It was a roughly perfect week, and we even got lucky. It was a great game. We had a great halftime show. The Chiefs were there. People watched because Taylor Swift was there. It was everything that could have happened in our favor happened, and it was in Las Vegas, and it was just fantastic. It also brings the eyes of the world. Formula One and the Super Bowl in particular have opened up the eyes of the world to Las Vegas. The marketing value that we got out of those 2 events 3 months apart was something that we could never afford. We've got a pretty big budget. We could never have afforded to pay for that. And that creates critical mass and interest from other sports and other events, and they see the success that those have in Las Vegas, and they're calling us now.
Yeah. From an organic marketing perspective, I just had to chuckle in the day before the Super Bowl, watching like the plane going from Tokyo to Las Vegas, like to see if she would make it there. I was like, that's kind of amazing. It was like a perfect storm.
It really was.
Yeah,
absolutely. And the entire week I think was incredible. Obviously culminating with the big game, and obviously being president of the Raiders, I'll have to share what our team owner said. We think Las Vegas won the Super Bowl. I won't say the name of the team that actually won, but Las Vegas won the Super Bowl because it was, it opened with that opening night that was at the stadium, and that was kind of the first time that the NFL had done that, at least in a decade, of having, both teams there, media there, fans being there at a lower cost point as well. So kind of welcoming everyone to Las Vegas in the stadium on that Monday, and then culminating, or maybe it was a Wednesday, and then culminating with the big game then. But, just incredible feedback all the way around, just because of not just the walkability, but the fact that so many businesses, large and small, were able to work together. Everyone was able to benefit, and even giving out over $3 million in community impact funding as well. So it was just a full circle, great moment.
So when the stadium was built, let's talk a little bit about the impact on the community and that the people that live around that area. There's been some concern about gentrification or rising housing prices around where Allegiant Stadium actually is, especially for the folks that work in the tourism sector that need to, get to work. How is Las Vegas addressing that and kind of helping the people that work possibly in the other tourism industries in Vegas?
Well, where Allegiant is situated is really in kind of a warehouse district.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think the folks who own the warehouses around the stadium were pretty thrilled that Allegiant was coming. Their property values went up pretty significantly, and it really wasn't a gentrification issue there. Where the A Stadium is going to be is right on the corner of Tropicana and Las Vegas Boulevard, where the Tropicana is now. There's a little bit of sentimentality around the Tropicana coming down, but that property was built in '57. It hasn't really been a marquee property in a couple of decades. And so that's really redevelopment of those areas that has been pretty beneficial. Where we had concern was the Formula One circuit. When that was built, and justifiably so, it was very difficult on the community and mostly on the workforce trying to get to work, and some of the local businesses that were kind of clogged up because of construction. Now, folks in New York wouldn't have a lot of sympathy for that, but in Las Vegas, that's not normal. If we had to do the first year like that over and over, it would probably not be something that we would do. But it will be substantially better. We were in construction 5 months into the year last year by now. We just got started this year. So much better situation moving forward there.
Yeah. So from a marketing perspective, we've got tourism and travel execs in the room here. The Raiders weren't always a Vegas team, so we had a bit of rebranding. We had, an audience change, shifting customer base. How has the Raiders successfully tackled that? No pun intended.
We have such an international and iconic brand, and obviously have 3 Super Bowls and have moved from Oakland to LA to Oakland back to Las Vegas. So focusing on our local fan base is incredibly important. But the game day experience in Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium is much different than it's been at the other locations where the Raiders have been. And there's definitely a level of hospitality and service that comes with being in Las Vegas. Our partners and where people are staying are used to 4- and 5-star kind of concierge service. We want to make sure that translates in the stadium. So being able to balance that with making sure that we're staying true to our diehard Raider fans is something that it's honestly a needle that I thread, every single day with our marketing teams. And honestly, knowing that people come to Las Vegas to watch games. If you look at our top 2 kind of ticket reselling games, we're the number 1 ticket as far as ticket prices being resold, because I'd hope, no offense, but it's the Steelers and the Browns. People maybe don't want to be in Pittsburgh or in Cleveland. They'd rather watch their team in Las Vegas. And so it is a balance of making sure we're welcoming those fans, but obviously we want the stadium to be silver and black as well. But anyone that walks into the stadium, whether it be again for a Raider concert or a Raider game or a concert, we're going to make sure that's a high level of service. And there's other activations, whether it be a public practice or other things at training camp and things that we're doing in the community, having more local watch parties and things like that to make sure we're attracting a wide demographic of Raider fans.
Yeah.
One thing I'll add that has been beneficial for both of us is that the fan bases that the Raiders have in both LA and San Francisco travel to Las Vegas. So they are both Raiders fans and tourists. And that combination has been really helpful in the justification around Allegiant.
Yeah, so I think just overall it's safe to say in the near term, or like the last 5 years, Las Vegas has been a huge success story. And so I was wondering if you could think back on this recent period and give me like your top 3 crucial elements that you think made that happen. Steve, first to you.
Well, I mean, look, Bill Foley moving and deciding that he's going to bring an NHL team to Las Vegas. He made the announcement in 2014. The team hit the ice in 17, went to the Stanley Cup the first year. I mean, they moved into Las Vegas in just a almost perfect way. You should write a book about how to do it, both on the ice and off. And you know, they were an expansion team, and so it's a different situation from a fan standpoint in that, you know, everybody in Las Vegas didn't have disparate hockey affiliations, and it created this momentum. It happened. They happened to hit the ice 9 days after the 1 October shooting that we had. They handled that so exceptionally well that it just endeared them to Las Vegas. A couple years later, Mark comes along and decides, and this is before all that's happened and he knows that it's going to work, has made the commitment to come to Las Vegas, build Allegiant Stadium, and as I said, that's been the most transformative thing to happen in Las Vegas in the last number of decades. And then I think, you know, the Formula One calling us first in 2019, and then we have a pandemic, we come out of the pandemic, and make that happen. The iconic nature of Formula One running down the strip 10 o'clock on a Saturday night in Las Vegas is just a spectacle that you can't even watch and get a sense of how spectacular that is. So, you know, those 3 things have really drawn the eyes of so many others around the world.
And for you?
Oh, just, you know, with gaming being obviously a predominant industry, and I'm from Las Vegas, and so this notion of sports kind of coming in, and it's been a whirlwind, but it's been done in the right way, as Steve mentioned. You know, these are things that I don't think as a Las Vegan we would have even thought. If you would have asked me in 2015 that I would be here even talking about Allegiant Stadium, F1, having a Stanley Cup champions, back-to-back WNBA champions, and hopefully Super Bowl champions in Las Vegas soon, I would have, you know, said that wouldn't happen. So it's definitely a transformative I think the last probably 5 to 7 years that we've gone through. And Vegas is constantly reinventing itself. You know, I know Steve mentioned even the demolition of the Tropicana. That's something that I'm used to staying up late and watching demolitions of different things because Las Vegas is constantly reinventing itself. So we've had more non-gaming revenue than gaming revenue for the last 2 decades. And I think the sports tourism industry is just another wave that the city locally, even locals have embraced, and obviously the broader community, international community as well.
Okay,
You know,
go ahead.
People, I think, tend to forget this, and they see Vegas the way it is now. I moved to Vegas 37 years ago from Dayton, Ohio, and Dayton and Vegas were about the same size when I moved there in '87.
Oh, that's amazing.
Vegas is about 5 times larger than it was 35 years ago. And so the city continues to not only reinvent itself, but mature and grow. And that's allowed these things to take place too.
Who would you love to see perform at the Sphere?
Go ahead.
Goodness. Oh gosh, it takes. I want to see. Well, U2 was incredible.
Yeah.
Dead & Co was incredible. I don't know. I mean, my favorite artist.
Yeah.
But I want her to perform at the stadium, so I don't want to. I don't want to say.
Do they always show it on the outside when it's on the inside? No, they don't always do that.
Yeah, you have to be inside. But look, it's an absolutely incredible venue. Again, even outside, looking at F1 and seeing the Sphere. Unfortunately, we had an away game. I was in Miami when the race was going on. But I mean, it was such a spectacular kind of visual moment. So I mean, you know, the Sphere is different in that it's just iconic in and of itself, and there's just so many different things going on. But I'm not going to answer that question because I want that artist to perform at Allegiant Stadium.
Okay. Fair enough.
From a tourism standpoint, and she's already been at the stadium, Taylor Swift coming would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I think Sandra's probably eyeing Beyonce for the stadium.
I want them both to come back.
Yeah. Okay, I want to take a couple of audience questions here. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about F1 some more. With the F1 event potentially causing disruptions, how did you handle concerns with local residents and keep them engaged?
We survived the first year.
Yeah.
And made changes for the second. But what Liberty Media, who is this is the only race that they actually own. Formula One's business model is to have somebody else promote the race and they show up and race. They decided they wanted to own the race in Las Vegas. It wouldn't have happened if they hadn't made that decision. We announced that on March 30th of 2022 and had a race on November 18th of 23. We had no plans, no anything, just an intention to go create a race in 17 months. And they did a remarkable job of doing that, but it was very disruptive in the community.
Does it
and
cause traffic issues?
Yeah, it was, you know, we had to build the entire circuit. It's a 3.8 mile circuit. It's in obviously the most heavily trafficked road in the United States, I think. Because it's 24/7, there are people everywhere all the time, you know, shifts of workers, you know, we employ hundreds of thousands of workers in those properties in that 4-mile run. So it was very disruptive, and we really didn't have time to make adjustments. Now that we have had time, we've learned by going through that first year, those adjustments have been made. The circuit doesn't need to be built every year, so the first 5 months of that didn't happen this year. And we have reached out into the community to make sure that the race is beneficial to everybody in Las Vegas, and not just those around the circuit.
Is it a resident favorite at this point?
No, we still have some proving to do.
Gotcha.
To make it
so it's a tourist favorite, but not a resident favorite.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Another question from the audience, which this is an interesting one. How do you build events that have a lower number of participants spread over a longer period of time to spread the economic benefits rather than like the massive spikes like the Super Bowl?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we're doing big one-offs.
Yeah.
Doesn't build value for those, for the city and for the companies in Las Vegas that are involved. So, our top sports goal is to have a marquee event in the first or second quarter of the year in addition to the Formula One race every year. Because if you don't do something like that every year, it just becomes a bad comp from last year's quarter. And so that consistency matters. But our expectations of ourselves are of a very elevated nature. It's not, dumb it down and spread it out. It's make them all that great.
Mm-hmm. What's coming next?
Well, WrestleMania is coming.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
we've got Final Four coming. Hope to have a college football national championship. Hope to have the Super Bowl back. Those, and we want to stack those up. We've got targets each year to bring those kinds of high-profile events to Las Vegas regularly and just elevate the city. The other thing we think about is trying to find something that drives the city, drives compression in the market each week. And we've talked an awful lot about sports, but CES and the National Association of Broadcasters and the Home Builders and SEMA, those are at least the same number of attendees as these major sporting events. So we try and combine those things to have something like that each week and drive the city.
Yeah, absolutely. And all those events that Steve mentioned are at Allegiant Stadium.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but even without the kind of larger ticketed events that we have, there's obviously space for private events that we have often at Allegiant Stadium. So all of those conferences that Steve just mentioned, they'll have a private event, whether it could be a small intimate one for 100 people, it could be a larger one for up to 500 people, but it's just kind of a different break from a lot of the large convention spaces, right? To kind of be able to go to the stadium, they can do a tour, they have a small private event, and they can kind of be on their way. And those are things that we do often in midweek outside of those ticketed events.
Do you ever worry that, or like when is enough for Las Vegas? When are you going to kind of call it and be like, you know what, we're done. We have enough. We have enough people. We have enough tourists.
calling it. I don't
Yeah.
think the city wouldn't be what it was if there was ever a time where we said, let's kind of all the way put on the brakes. Obviously, we'll all look at the data and see what's working, what's not, and be able to kind of respond to the trends. But as I mentioned earlier, Las Vegas is always going to continue to reinvent itself, and that's what makes, I think, the city so special. But I don't know if you have a certain
Well,
sweet spot
yeah,
in
no, that's completely right. And, you know, our visitation is basically plateaued. What we are doing is making sure that it stays there. It has become an expensive proposition to make a project pencil in Las Vegas. What it takes to compete on Las Vegas Boulevard right now is going to cost you $1.5 million, $2 million a key all in. You got to make a return on investment in order to do that. And if the city starts to stagnate, you know, any community is like this. If you're not at least gradually growing, it's hard to stay just the same. And that becomes problematic. So we have to, you know, the stakes are higher in Las Vegas. We have to continue to drive in order to make things the next level of spectacular.
Well, Steve, Sandra, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.